inaugural episode of the Acknowledge to Action podcast. I am your host, Matthew Benko. In episode 1, titled Acknowledging the Journey of the Military Life and Beyond, we shine a light on the importance of recognizing challenges as the first step towards resolution. Joined by our guest, Nafis Beyah, a seasoned expert in navigating military, personal, and professional hurdles, we uncover the significance of acknowledging obstacles before charting a path forward. Throughout this episode and the entire series, we will introduce a transformative framework: acknowledge, accept, process, plan, and action that serves as a roadmap for conquering life's adversities and guiding you to achieve your goals. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember to subscribe to the Acknowledge to Action YouTube channel and podcast on your preferred podcast streaming service. Let's transition from acknowledgement to action together. Well, hey, Nafis, man, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to get the podcast going. I've known you a long time, so I'm really looking forward to this. We talked a little bit about what it represents and what Acknowledge to Action it entails. This is what the all the behind the scenes stuff, right? So with that said, again, I want to say thank you for being here, Nafis. I'm really looking forward. Oh man, this is going to be great. I can't think of a better way to kick off this inaugural episode. So can you share with our listeners a little bit about your military background and the journey that led you to serve?
All right, so I'll try to make it short. So basically, went off to college 2001. Wasn't so successful in my college journey due to funds. So I decided that I needed to make a way and get back to college. So I basically came home, hanging around the neighborhood, could have got into things I shouldn't have been getting into. So I really needed to do something. I knew somebody at the Delaware Guard, and they reached out to me, and the rest was history. 2002, September 16th, I believe, 2002, I enlisted in the Guard. And that was like my main goal was to get back to college. And found out that they had tuition assistance, went in, did all the paperwork, and they said, hey, you live in Pennsylvania. This is the Delaware National Guard. We're not giving you 100% tuition assistance. So that was a kind of kick to the,
Yeah.
And so I won't lie, I was a little upset with the Guard, wanted to get out, and I actually got a full-time job there, and it changed my life. Full-time job, set me right economically. I had a kid. I was able to take care of my family. So the Guard became my life. And at the end of the day, they changed the laws. I wound up getting in-state tuition assistance, went on and got a bachelor's, went on and got a master's. So pretty much that was it for me.
I have a feeling there's more to than that was just it. There's a lot of layers.
There's a lot more, deployments.
Yeah. That's just that's it. We're gonna talk a little bit about that dynamic, and it's like here you're approaching retirement now, right? Any day now, almost like I think you're a couple weeks out from retirement, right?
Yeah, about 3 weeks.
So how many years of service total?
21.
21. That's something. I mean, when you look back on it, it goes by pretty quick. But when you're in process doing it, especially at the National Guard level, and that's what this, the podcast. I mean, we're talking with veterans, we're talking with servicemen from active duty, the National Guard and Reserves, but particularly the dynamic that comes with serving in the National Guard. So you served in the U.S. Air Force Air National Guard for 21 years, right? Coming
Correct.
up on 21 years, and you the majority of your time was as a full-timer, right?
Correct. 15 years.
Okay, so talk a little bit about, like, when you hear full-time, because when we hear National Guard reservists, we think of weekend warriors, 1 week a month, 2 weeks out of the year, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? So your first 15 years, you were a full-timer. Talk a little bit about that.
So basically, I got lucky, 19 years old, got a full-time job, or 20 years old, got a full-time job there. And it changed my life. because coming out of high school, really no further education beyond that, it's hard to get a good job and take
Yeah.
care of a family on a minimum wage salary. So I kind of got lucky. I got in there full time with literally little knowledge about my career, and the guard changed that. It gave me a platform to actually learn a trade, um, and get good at it. So I spent that 15 years just homing in on my skills. And over the years, you will find that it gets tough. It gets tough at some points because I think in my 10 years, I maxed out my pay. And 10 years in, and I'm like, well, I'm 30 years old, maybe. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to make any more money. This is it. This is everything. And that's the tough part about it because you get stuck, but you don't want to leave because it's good money. You're able to take care of your family, but you like, is there something else out there? You know?
Yeah.
And I was young. I was like, I couldn't. That's when I started questioning myself, and I was like, you know what? Is it more for me to do? Can I do it? And how do I get there? And working full time, I had that ability to see different routes. I had the ability to spend that time going to college, and they were paying for it. I got to talk to a bunch of people, networking, using that time valuable. Being full time and being around all those resources, was great.
Yeah.
It was great. But then the other flip side to it is, you have that military uniform on. We dual status. It's
Yeah.
like I'm a civilian now, but no, I got the military uniform on, and it's kind of weird. But
No, it is. And you hit, well, you got a lot of great points in what you just said, but, what you were saying about the whole dual status thing, because um, talk a little bit about when you say like you're full time, like,
mm,
are you an active duty military member or are you a civil GS
yeah,
position wage grade? So talk a little bit about that because it's interesting because you're wearing the uniform, but you're in a different pay status.
right.
And
So
talk about how like that could be challenging and
yes,
confusing at times, right?
yes. It's
Yeah.
it. When I first started, it was very confusing, and then I just dealt with it like, you know what, this is just the military. It's not
Yeah.
civil service or whatever. It's the military,
Yeah.
because no matter what, the military is always going to be the deciding factor in every element of that position. Because you have the uniform on, so they're going to say, well, if you were in a uniform, you have to do this. All right, so that's the control aspect behind that, which sucks because you're really not in the military when you're a full-time civilian personnel. You
Yeah.
know, we're just contributing to the mission at that point. But I think for more people that have issues, that being in that status is an issue. For me, I just went with the flow. I went with the flow. I came to work. I did my job. I never really pissed anybody off. I just did what I had to do. But when you have an issue, during the week they might can't touch you, but during that 1 week in the month,
Yeah.
you on their time, so they can do whatever they want. So it's tough for some people. I didn't really have an issue that much with it.
Yeah. It's just it's an interesting variable to
Hmm.
say the least, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because there is a percentage of a full time work staff, and that consists of AGRs, right? Active
yeah,
Guard Reserve, and
yeah,
then you have your technicians, right? And then that's what
yeah,
you were, right? You were
yeah.
a
Technician.
technician,
Hmm.
okay? And that's all facilitated through USA Jobs. Your
Yeah,
traditional, for those familiar with the, GS and wage grade federal job position,
yeah,
you're technically a technician, right?
yeah,
And those dual statuses, that's what you're referring to. Those
yeah,
dual statuses, it could, yeah, it's challenging. It's talking about
yeah,
beyond the uniform
yeah,
because you are technically speaking beyond the uniform during the week, Monday through
yeah,
Friday.
yeah,
You're in a technician status, and then
yeah,
the 1 week in a month you're in a military status, and when you deploy, we get activated, right?
yeah,
So we're
yeah,
going to talk a little bit here shortly, like the types of activations, where the
yeah,
military took you,
yeah,
and how that transition, how you manage that transition going
yeah.
from full time military status
Hmm.
as with Title 10 we get activated, right, and then
Hmm.
back to the technician status or
Hmm.
whatnot. But
And I
um,
will say the tough part about those dual status positions is that you know that your life depends on being there. Because once you get out the military, you can't have a full-time technician job.
Yeah.
So you have to stay in the military to hold your position. So it's like, well, I don't want to be in the military for the rest of my life, but I still want a job, so that's the sucky part about it.
Yeah. That's
It's
it.
weird.
Um, you know, to to identify some of the things you acknowledge, you said earlier, like right out of high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
You knew like I got to do something. You acknowledged, right? You acknowledged
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that I want to go to school and I need some resources to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you identified the Air Force at the time again, because
Mm-hmm.
I know looking back in hindsight, it's you could look back and decipher things a little bit better, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
all you knew is like Air Force. You didn't know this dynamic between the
No,
Delaware Guard and the
no,
Pennsylvania Guard and active duty Air Force. Like it's just like wow,
no.
just
I just
I
joined the
just
Air Force.
yeah, I'm gonna join the Air Force but I just want to highlight how you acknowledge that like internally, like and
Yeah,
we could pull back the layers a little bit, but it's like you knew, Nafis knew at 17, 18, getting out of high school, I got to do something
yeah,
to find a way to take action, to put tools in my toolbox, to get the resources I need to go, achieve these goals and objectives,
yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure.
That's kind of what I'm hearing here as far,
Yeah,
and the Air Force did that, right?
yeah.
And the Air
Mm-hmm.
National Guard did that, and you found home Delaware Air National Guard for 20
Mm-hmm.
plus years, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Um, yeah, and I know in summary that sounds like okay, but man, there's a lot that goes into that 21 years. So,
Yeah,
with that said, talk a little about where your journey has taken you. What when from not, it can start from day one at there, but let's talk about the deployments. Let's talk about the TDYs. Let's talk about the
yeah.
training because you know can you please share with the audience first, like what? So in the Air Force, I always joke it's real easy to make light of stuff, but we are special, so we call
Yeah.
ours AFSC, Air Force Specialty Code,
Special
right?
code.
Other
Mm-hmm.
branches of service known as the MOS, Military Occupational Specialty, right? So what was your AFSC/MOS in the Air Force?
I was my first was a 2A74, I believe that's what it was. That was survival equipment. And
Okay,
then survival equipment merged with life support, and I became a 1P0X1 or 1P09. I'm a 1P091. I'm a 9 level.
okay,
Um, so, which is now aircrew flight equipment.
aircrew flight
So,
equipment. Okay,
basically, we maintain the equipment for aircrew members, and we put it on the aircraft. We inspect it, parachutes, oxygen masks. We conduct classes for the aircrew members, um, uh, different training, different survival training. Um, it's not a tough job at all. It's not a tough job. It's tedious, but everything that we do is for the crew members, and we can't afford to mess up because crew members' lives depend on it. They
yeah,
depend on our equipment to be, good and in great working condition. Um, so I found that over the years, you can get very relaxed in doing our job because it's just, it comes easy
yeah,
to you, it comes natural. But over the course of the years, we had multiple units that had aircraft incidents, and people lost their lives. And I found that when that happens, anybody involved can be liable. That one
mhm,
screw you put in a mask, even if it's not a part of the aircraft accident, they're investigating, and if they find it's wrong, it's on you. You know, so I've always tried to take my job serious, but um, me being in my position, it gave me the ability to travel a little bit. We've been on deployments to Afghanistan. I think my first 3 deployments was Bagram, Afghanistan, which
yeah,
kind of sucked. It kind of sucked, but I met people. I got to see a lot of things. And for me, like I always tell people, I'm fortunate to have been a part of a lot of events that changed America. We were part of the war in Afghanistan. I was there when they got Osama bin Laden. Um, this period that just passed when they pulled out of Afghanistan, I was in Kuwait, and we supported those missions. So it was pretty dope to be a part of
Yeah.
historical events. I can go back and say, hey, I was there. You know, I can tell my kids about it. I made a difference somewhere, one way or another. Um, it's tough to see some of the things that's happening around the world, but to
Yeah.
know that we're there to make some changes is really dope. Which is one of the hardest things that you have to deal with over this last couple of months when I made that decision to retire.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, but I've been all over. We've been Germany, Italy, Scotland, Canada,
Yeah.
you know,
So
Kuwait.
it was a combination of deployments to places you probably never want to go back to again, and there's
Yeah,
probably a number of places. I've been with you on some of
yeah, some of
those
those deployments. Yeah,
experiences. I was over there with you in Kuwait, and I was just getting to the unit when you guys were over in Afghanistan.
yeah,
And so yeah, I remember all that, and that's you acknowledging that and inventorying that, right? All those
yeah.
experiences that you can share with friends, family, colleagues. I mean, we pull back the layers. There's so much to be shared and talk about.
Yeah.
And I'll say there's good, there's bad, and there's straight up
Hmm.
ugly stuff that we've
Yeah.
experienced, right? That
Yeah,
you've
for sure.
experienced and all that. And I that's the importance of this, is to just kind of like acknowledge that,
Yeah.
accept things that are harder to accept, and process that. We need to
Yeah.
take time to process and plan for ideally action that's going to lead to favorable outcomes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, and that's kind of, I look back on my military experience and all that, and do it, and it helps with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you said some really important things, AFE, right? Aircrew flight
Hmm.
equipment.
Hmm.
I have a pretty, we have a pretty significant, wearing the uniform, we have a tight, close knit working relationship, right?
Yeah.
As an
Hmm.
aircrew guy, you referenced aircrew, C-130 Loadmaster. It is so important, like that trust piece and the integrity piece, right? The Air Force
Hmm.
core value, our first thing is integrity first, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and there's a reason for that. Like every organization, unit, you name it, has these core values. But it's amazing, like when you get older, it makes a lot more sense, right?
Yeah,
Because I
for
know when I
sure.
was in basic training, it's like it's just something you memorize. Like what? Yeah,
Yeah.
here you
Well,
go. I
yeah.
memorized it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you apply it, so every job, I'll say this: every job we do in the military is important. It's
Important.
critical.
Hmm.
Yeah, we all have our part. Um, but as I was listening to what you're saying, there's a reason why we have training, and the core values and all the stuff that we do to stay current and proficient, right? Because
Hmm.
I'll say this, there is a false sense of security when we get comfortable doing something, right?
That's a fact.
Um, and with that, it's easy. Well, we could arguably, we're all guilty of that to a certain extent. So when we
Yeah.
challenge ourselves, and when we're in a moment to acknowledge that, like where we feel ourselves getting a little complacent, it's important to keep ourselves in check. Now, with your rank, you're senior master sergeant. That's E8, right?
Yeah.
And so your job, I will let me ask you, what was your job? Like, as a senior master sergeant, as a senior leader in the AFE section, how do you address that, like internally, with yourselves? Because you hit a lot of good key points. But how do you do that to empower all those that are in your shop
Hmm.
to be their best and to provide that service and that product that's so super critical,
Hmm.
in the aircrew world?
I think for me, I've been blessed with having a shop dynamic where we grew up together. We're family. So the airmen and women under me, um, they watch me grow into where I'm at now. So they respect me because they know the position that I've always taken. I've always been honest. I've always been hardworking. I've
Hmm.
always made the best effort to understand any regulation, policy, whatever that's going to benefit us and the crew members and United States Air Force in the whole.
Yep.
I've always made the best effort possible. So as an E8 now, when I make decisions, it's like, all right, we're going with what he says. We're going with his decisions because I set that in example, and I've always done the right thing. They can always count on me to do the right thing, you know. Um, so it's never been hard for me to lead. because I've
Yeah.
been taught. And one, I've always said that we have to have great mentors, and we have to be great mentors. I've had a good mentor. You know, uh, Chief Keef. Like Chief Keef does not do anything he's not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like he's always made that clear. Even if he had enough room to wiggle to do something and could get away with it, he still wouldn't do it. And he taught me that. Always do the right thing. Always do it the right way. Because if you do it that way, you won't have to worry about getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Even if somebody doesn't like the way that you did it, they can't say anything because you did it the right way. You know, so that's how I try to lead.
And that absolutely speaks to the Air Force core values, like integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we
Excellence in
do.
all we do. Hmm.
And really, when you take a step back, that's so empowering.
Yeah.
And it's such a guiding force because when times get a little bit tough, or we could. I mean, there's a laundry list probably of times where we're overwhelmed, where
Hmm.
where where it's just a lot on our plate. But
Hmm.
that's where resiliency comes into play,
Facts.
adaptability, and all the good training we have.
Yeah.
We could put it into action, right?
Yeah.
So that's real important to hear. Now I want to touch upon something you said. You said, you grew up. Your shop is your family, right?
Hmm.
Because you have relationships with some of these folks for
Hmm.
20 plus years. You
Hmm.
and Chief Keith go back
Hmm.
20 plus years, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
In the active duty world, we know like arguably, generally speaking, every 2-3 years, you're being relocated
Hmm.
because that's just the nature of the active duty world, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Whereas in the guard, it's here you are, talking about how this was your home, this is your family for 20
Yeah.
plus years,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of return on value with that,
Hmm.
um, and there's some importance, but there's also some challenges with that too.
Hmm.
Because we could get comfortable with somebody. Like for you,
Yep.
you came in as a airman basic, I assume, right? A
Yep.
one
Yep.
striper, E1, and moved all the way up to E8, and
Hmm.
and your colleagues saw that, experienced that, and all that stuff. And talk a little bit how you managed that dynamic, to grow into that role, of
Hmm.
leadership, and to go from an airman basic all the way up to senior master sergeant with your family, because
Hmm.
there are family dynamics that
Yeah.
are important to be aware of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For
And
sure. For
yeah,
sure. Yeah. When you're growing together, there might be some hate. It's like, well, how they get promoted over me, and But I've always learned that it's so easy to operate in the guard. Just do what you're supposed to do. You do your PME, you do your CDCs, you stay out of trouble, don't get in trouble, don't get on anyone's radar. And I just always say ultimately just be a good person.
yeah,
Because when people like you, they're going to go to the full length to do things for you. They want to see
hmm
you be successful. So I just try to stick with that mentality. I came to work every day. I try to be the best I could be. And when it was time to get promoted, they're like, here's the checklist. Do you have all this stuff done? I sure do. All right, well, you're
yeah,
getting promoted. Whereas though some of my peers, they're like, did you do this? Did you do that? No, I don't have the time. It's too hard. Well, you don't want it that bad. If you want something, you have to sacrifice most of the time. You'll have to sacrifice something, whether it be your time, you know, whether it be shit. How many times? Oh, excuse me. I don't. Can I
no,
cuss
it's
here?
all good. We're not regulated by the FCC. So you just let it rip, man.
We sacrifice our families,
Yep.
deploying, you know. But I understood the whole time that I was in the guard that there were going to be sacrifices. I sacrificed time with my family. I think the first year my daughter was born, I was TDY. The first year she was born, I went TDY for a year.
Yeah.
Um, I sacrificed that time because I knew in 20 years it was going to pay off. Whether it was that my kids have a GI Bill or,
Hmm.
VA rating. I have a VA rating because I hurt myself, but that was a sacrifice. I sacrificed my body. I sacrificed my time, my family. But now I feel comfortable that everything's going to work out, you
Yeah.
know. But definitely coming up, there's challenges. But every time you get promoted, it's like a breath of fresh air. We call it getting re-blued. I got re-blued every time I got
Yeah.
promoted.
Yep.
Every time I got promoted, I was motivated. All right, I'm a staff sergeant. It's time to do staff sergeant things. I'm a tech sergeant, So it's just try to keep your head in the game and just always want the best for the people coming up after you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what helped me. It kept me motivated.
No, that's really cool how you said that. Is like at the end of the day, you're responsible for the actions you take, right?
Yeah.
And ideally, I would think, generally speaking, we want to engage in behaviors that lead to favorable outcomes, right?
Facts.
And that's where we have to inventory ourselves and say, all right, this is an opportunity. It's based off preparation and based off skill set, education, training, experience, all that stuff, right? And there's just, you doing that in the Delaware Guard in organization that you've been a part of 21 years is credit to you, because it's easy to get complacent, but it's also challenging to set yourself from those peers and the family and say, all right, I got business to attend to. Because I think of, what I was thinking of when you were talking, like slow and steady wins the race. 21, what, if you're starting day one today, man, 20 years, you're not even thinking about 5 years ahead of you, let alone 20. You're like, what? 20 years?
Yeah.
I know when I was like 20, I'm like, yeah, right. Well, whatever. I don't even know what that means right now, but slow and steady wins the race. But there's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations along the way.
Yeah.
There's going to be detours. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be, and there's so many we could go into, but finding those ways to do it is the critical part, right?
But
is the actionable part.
It's about, like you talk about preparation, it's about that preparation. And being young in the Guard, I didn't care about that at one point. I just was like, show me the money. How do I make more money? Get promoted. Show me the money. But then, like I said, when I got that 10 years in and I learned that, I can be stuck here and I can't make any more money. And I'm just stuck in this position and I'm not moving. That's when I started understanding preparation. That's when I started looking on the outside. That's when I was like, I'm a contracting officer now. So I'm looking on the outside. I remember one day going on USA Jobs and I see contracting officer. I'm like 80,000, 115,000. I'm like, whoa. All right, how do I get one of these jobs? Because it seems to be a lot of those jobs out there. And it took me 5 years to put I started before that, so it probably took me 8 years to put myself in that position because I found out that you had to have a degree to get that job. So I said, now it's time for me to go back to school and get my degree. Went back and got my bachelor's, applied for jobs. I applied for, I think, 30-something jobs. I got an offer letter from almost all of them. And it took me 8 years. It took me probably about 6 to 7 years to get to that position. But I knew, like you said, slow and steady. I knew it was going to take time. Yeah. But you have to plan for the future. You have to have a plan. And I think now this is one of the issues that I have with some of the younger airmen and women. They don't. My chair keeps going down. They don't. They don't care about the future as much. They want everything so fast, and it's like, listen. You can even get everything right now, but you wouldn't understand it. You don't have the mental capacity.
You wouldn't appreciate it and value it.
Yeah. You're going to destroy it the minute you get it. So just take your time. But you set that plan up. You prepare, and the outcome, it feels good, man.
I'm going to share a quote with you that's stuck with me over the years, and then I'll tell you where I got it from. I'd be super surprised if you knew right away where I got it from, because you might be surprised where I heard it and where it stuck with me, right? So the time to plan for a rainy day is when the sun is out. And that's stuck with me over the years, because it's like, hey, the time to plan for that, we look at rainy day like almost in a good way. It's like 8 years. Here you are talking about 8 years out. Like, okay, I want to start this transition. You acknowledge, all right, I've hit the max as far as what I'm capable of achieving as a technician here in the Guard. And then this is a perfect segue into the civilian career questions that we're going to go into. And you acknowledge that, you accepted it for what it is, and then you processed it, did what you had to do, and you came up with a plan to take action. and then
Mm-hmm.
boom, here you are in a GS position. We'll get clarity here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
That's your rainy day. Your rainy day was 8 years out. You were in your technician job in the Air Guard where things were stable, things were steady, but you knew what you had to do to achieve that next objective, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think about that quote often. So, um, do you know where I got that from? I'll give you a
No.
hint. It was from a childhood cartoon.
A childhood
I
cartoon.
know. I'm throwing out like that's like wow. There's like hundreds. That's like where are you going with this? Where are you going with this? So all right. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, there's some epic cartoons out there.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
Thundercats was a go-to.
Thundercats. Yeah. Oh
Thundercats.
yeah, that's your thing. Yeah, yeah. We talked about
Yeah,
this before.
I did. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Panthro said that to Lionel, right?
Yeah.
And it was in one episode. And I watched it. So I have a 5-year-old son, right? And we're watching, YouTube gives you everything, right?
Yeah.
And we were watching this episode and he's all into it, which is awesome as a dad. And then I remember I was like, he said that. I'm like, man, I probably heard that when I was like 8 or 9 or whatever. I'm like, yeah, well, what's he talking about? You
Yeah.
didn't get much credit. But in the
Yeah.
moment, just within the last like whatever year or two, I heard that. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
that's good. So we get inspiration and motivation from all different sorts. And when on the tail end of this episode, we're kind of skim the surface on how some things can influence beyond the technical training that we've had access to. Like you said, with all the training, all the formal training that we've been through.
Mm-hmm.
So you referenced your civilian profession, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're now in that role, and you've been doing it for what, approximately 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is your civilian profession, and how does it complement or contrast with your military career? You touched upon how like you transitioned to it, and you did what you had to do to achieve it. But talk a little bit about that. As far as how you've managed your civilian career beyond the military uniform to technically this civilian uniform. To talk a little bit about that.
So at first it was pretty tough. I actually had anxiety because I was at the Guard for so long.
Yeah.
And then going into the full civilian world, they don't operate how we operate. Accountability. So it was just weird for me. It took me like a year and a half, 2 years to adjust because it was so much more relaxed. It was so much more relaxed. So I had a little anxiety. But now I'm booming and thriving. So basically, I'm a contracting officer. I work in construction and equipment. So I buy a lot of things that we use. P-touch labels. I buy things like pens. I've purchased everything, man. I don't know.
Well, what organization, what department is that? Are you with?
So I work at DLA Troop Support, which is under Department of Defense. It's
Okay.
it's under the Department of Defense, and we buy everything for the military. We buy everything. So it's for me, it means a lot, and it helps me because I know I'm retiring from the military, but now I'm still contributing, right?
Okay.
Right. So I work with a lot of people who don't understand the military, never had any military experience. So, like I said, we do contracts. And they always ask me, they're like, you're always working so hard. I'm like, because it's important for these guys to have this stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's a battery, it could be a sticker. You know how much labels and stickers, how important they are when we having an inspection. Oh, you didn't put a 2x2 label on this piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Oh, you fell,
Yeah.
So when I'm doing contracts, I keep, the Delaware Guard members and any other member in the Army, Marines, Navy. I keep these guys in mind. I'm like, this contract that I'm working on is extremely important. If they ordered it, they need it, So I think that's been helping me a lot with my transition because I found something that was still, it still has a relationship with the military some type of way, and I still might get the opportunity to deploy. I'm actually they asked me to go to Europe in about like 4 weeks or something.
As your civilian contractor position, okay. Wow. So with the DL, is that Defense Logistics Agency?
Yes.
DL? So with the Defense Logistics Agency, you still have the opportunity to go overseas
Yeah.
And oh man, that's like second nature to you now at this
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah.
it's like, all
Yeah.
right, you got this, you know.
Yeah.
And it's almost like um, that could be anxiety provoking for somebody who's never done it. But it's like here, it's
Oh
almost
yeah.
like it's normal. It's like
Yeah.
it's funny. It's like I know for me, I get anxiety when I don't go anywhere for X amount of period of time.
Yeah. Me
It's great.
too.
It's like a different.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going 12 months without a major life
Yeah.
deviation, you
Yeah.
know, like so.
Yeah. It's
um,
depressing sometimes. I get like that. I just
yeah,
was telling my fiance, I was like, I really need to do something or go somewhere. And I was telling her, I said, me getting out the military, those every 18 months you probably going on a deployment, I look forward to it. It's like, man, I sit around the house and I'm like, I got to do something. I got to go back to school, pick up a trade. I have to do something because I won't have that military part of my life, you know. But working in my new position, it's definitely helped ease the process. And I like it because I'm a beacon of light for the people that I work around because they never understood, I've heard somebody say, "Oh, that's just a sticker. Why are they emailing me so much
it goes
about a
way
sticker?"
beyond that. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, you don't know what that sticker is used for.
yeah,
It might be an arrow that's telling you to press this button, and if these people don't know to press that button, they might blow the wrong person up. I'm like, you just don't know.
yeah.
But when they hear me talk about it so passionately, they want to do their jobs a little bit better. So I mean, and that's what I would tell anyone retiring. If you plan on working, try to do something that's going to scratch that itch that you may have or that
Yeah.
you'll miss about being in the military, or work around military members or veterans or something. Because it will definitely help ease the anxiety. Because, dude, I was getting anxiety a lot, especially when I first left. I was just like, oh man, I left. I had it nice over there in Delaware.
Yeah,
But you have to make the leap. Can't be
you
here
do.
forever.
Yeah, you do. You got to take that next step on your journey. You got to keep that momentum. And from what you're sharing and how you're describing you did that. Like you saw, I don't want to call it the writing on the wall, but like at 10, 11
Yeah,
years, you were
yeah,
like, all right, I got to start this transition.
yeah,
And it was another 5 years out. You did what you had to do, but you kept that momentum. And that's pretty insightful.
yeah,
That's really keen awareness. And, just in my opinion, I'm like, man, that's pretty impactful. Um,
yeah.
Cause we talk about that there's common dialogue out there as veterans, whether we're active duty, guard, reserves, even family members, right?
Hmm.
It's like, how do we deal with transition, right? Where we go from this particular environment, what we're used to the next, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And arguably, everyone in life has to deal with that to a certain degree.
Hmm.
In the military and especially in the guard, there's added levels of there's added degrees to that, right?
Hmm.
So with that said, with transition and work-life balance, right? Those are big, like we hear that often, right? Just like
Hmm.
like leadership could be a buzzword. It's like, what does that even mean sometimes?
Right,
But
right.
to focus on the work-life balance and the transition, but here, I'll say maintaining a work-life balance can be difficult, even with just one career, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
this for working the DLA and all that's a beast in and of itself. But then
Hmm.
how doing that along with managing your Air National Guard because you went at
Yeah,
year 15 you became a traditional, right?
yeah, yeah,
How did you prioritize self-care and personal time amidst all the demands of your dual careers, right?
yeah.
And what advice do you have for others who are in that position, or in this case, like may have a similar trajectory or a path? Like, all right, I'm 10 years into the guard and I need to start focusing on my civilian career. I need to start planning for that rainy day, right? So,
Hmm.
with work-life balance and advice, what do you have for those?
So, like I said, first of all, you have to know that whatever you're going to do in that next phase, you're going to like doing it or love doing it,
Okay.
right? And for me to have that work-life balance, it meant being closer to home. I didn't have a good work-life balance full time in Delaware. It took me an hour, sometimes 2 hours to get to work. Same thing coming home. So I was burnt out.
Yeah.
DLA is 6 minutes from my house. I can walk to work if I need be.
Oh, that's
You
nice.
know, I could walk to work. We telework too. We have telework, you know. So I have that free time to be with my family. It helped me financially so I can go on vacations. I think since I left the guard, I increased my pay probably about $40,000 a year. You know, um, so it gave me that work life balance, right? It gave me that work life balance. It was hard because I had anxiety at first. All I knew was the guard, but I was like I had to jump out there. I had to do it because it may have benefited me to leave, and it did. So
Yeah.
I took that step, and my advice for others would be don't be scared,
Mm-hmm.
right? And listen to yourself. I knew when I started second guessing, you know, how long I wanted to be here. Because before I would just get up every day, go to work, and just be okay with going to work. But then
Yeah.
I was like, man, do I need to, or do I want to? So I was like, you know what? I can't second guess myself. I got to make the decision. And I watch others around me. I watched all the old guys burnt out at the end of their career, you know, and now they just sticking around. They're not even doing anything. They just sitting around because they're scared to let it go.
Yeah.
They scared to let it go. You know, so you have to just let it go and just I'm a man of God. Like I pray. And I'm like this might be the best thing for me, and it wound up being the best thing for me. I won't lie, the first year was rough. I actually
Yeah.
took a pay cut the first year because I was in a training program.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a pay cut, but I knew after the training program ended, my pay would increase. I would start being able to telework. But I would definitely tell people, you just got to do it. You just got
Yeah.
to, if you're ready to, and like I said, listen to yourself and just take that leap, take that
That,
leap. And I will say, when I left to be full time and became a traditional, it was tough because I was so used to being knowledgeable about everything that went on in the shop. When you come in 1 week in a month, you don't know a damn thing. I
yep.
started losing all the knowledge. You know, some of the younger airmen would come to me and ask me questions, and I'm like, I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you. When before I knew it right off the top. Oh, yeah, you go here, it's in the TO over there, So they get a kick out of testing me because now they want to make me look, well, Mr. Know-it-all don't know it all anymore,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
plays on your ego. But I learned that now I have a different role. It's not up to me to come in and work on equipment when I come in on drill weekends. It's up to me to put out fires. It's up to me to inspire younger airmen, be a mentor, be part of the next two program that we started, you know, and do that. I'm on my way out. I'm just there now to encourage people to be better, to be there as a resource, and finish it out when my time is done.
Yeah.
I had to learn. I think a lot of times with supervisors and leaders, especially when you came up working, you was being in the mix all the time. You was there touching equipment or loading the planes. You always want to do that, but when
Yeah.
you get to a certain point, you have to realize that your role is changing. Your role is to be in the office. Your
Yeah.
role is to do paperwork. Go sit in board meetings. Go get screamed at by the commander.
Yeah.
So once
Those
I
are great
realized
points.
that, it was easy. I was just coming on a drill weekend. They look at me like, Feast, you're not going to do any work? No, that's not my job. That's your job. I did work for the last 15 to 20 years. Now you do that.
Yeah.
Just tell me if we have a problem. I'm going to go get my coffee and look like I'm important.
I I and you know this, but one of the inspiring motivators for this and me doing the podcast and acknowledge to action is the significance of acknowledge, because in our checklist, in our operational checklist, the most important, if not the most critical word we have in that checklist is acknowledged.
Hmm.
Any crew member on there is like, well, whether it's after takeoff checks, when they initiate that, acknowledge, and all crew members
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything, nor should you do anything until you acknowledge it. So the advice you gave is very important because you're putting tools in toolbox in a perspective, in somebody's world now, for them to help them acknowledge when their time comes, right? However it may be, it's like you have to acknowledge that, internally, that you're having a hard time with something, or you're desiring a different sort of trajectory, whether it's career, in the guard, civilian career, education. I mean, you name it. The list goes on and on. So that is really great, and it's an awesome way to kind of like on the tail end of this episode, because it really sets an amazing tone and a foundation for those to tap into. Because hearing your experiences, like you said something, it's like sometimes we learn from others by like, I'm not doing what he or she did.
Right. Right.
That's, I mean, I hope that doesn't come across as negative, but it's just facts.
It's
It's just
facts.
real.
It's
It's
facts.
real world. It's like, but when we do have the opportunity or the access point to, man, what he's doing that's what I want to do in my own way. Like I want to take those tools, those resources, and I believe that's what mentorship is to help others identify their course act, to put tools in their toolbox that they have access to, so they could plan for that rainy day. They could plan for those trials and tribulations that they're going to deal with. So on that note, one, I want to say thank you, but because we're going to go into some of the outro questions here. We're going to have a little bit of fun on the tail end of things. But you touched upon a lot of great points today, which is incredibly valuable, right? And this is going to be a steady question I'm going to ask all the guests on the podcast. How does acknowledging the unique challenges faced by the National Guard Reserves, the veteran community, and the families serve as a crucial starting point for addressing the issues effectively? Everything we kind of talked about. When I say issues, you're 20 years. I mean, there's a lot you've
Right.
dealt with and you conquered. Some things, and we had some experience that just beat us down, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Facts.
nature of the beast, right? So what advice would you have for others to deal with those sort of life challenges effectively beyond the uniform, in the uniform and beyond the uniform?
I think we have to get to a point where we know how to establish our own peace.
Okay.
Once I learned how to establish my own peace, stress didn't affect me as much. You know,
Yeah.
we all deal with some form of PTSD, something. If we deployed and did it, we all deal. But being able to find what my peace is, like my family, my daughters, you know, that always helped reset me. That always helped reset me.
Okay.
Like it's like when I'm dealing and I'm like, why am I doing this? What's going on? Why am I still here? Oh, I just need to get out of here. And it's like I'm here because I want my kids to have a better future. Right? That's my peace. You
Yeah.
know, that's my peace. So it's like, somebody in leadership. So you're always nonchalant about everything. Man, I'm at peace, man.
Yeah.
I'm at peace. I can't change. Certain things you can change, certain things you can't change. So that would be my advice. Try to find your peace, and that is what's going to help you out of every situation. You
Okay.
got to have something to grab onto, whether it's your family, God, whatever. You got to have something to grab onto.
That is really great advice. Like you said, to have that peace, have that something to ground us out. Like you
Yeah,
said,
for sure.
I can't say it any better. I mean, that's pretty. When you identify that, and it's one of those things you can't unexperience and unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know what your piece is, in my opinion, nothing can stop you.
Yeah,
Life could throw whatever it throws at you, but you
yeah,
got this. It's like,
yeah,
because you got your piece. Like it makes it more manageable.
yeah.
Because you said, like, when's not a matter if, but when stress does hit us, you're
Mm-hmm.
managing stress instead of stress
Mm-hmm.
managing you.
Managing you.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the power of acknowledgement, to take that action, right? To put it in a
Yeah,
nice sort of like packaged sort of
yeah,
approach, right?
yeah.
Just, yeah. So this is great. I
And
can't thank you enough.
I will say I got there too through therapy.
Okay.
I got there through therapy, and I know a lot of military members have a hard time or acknowledging the fact that they need to go to therapy.
Yes.
You know,
Uh,
I've I've been going through therapy consistently probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
right? I've used every resource possible to get there. I get it for free too. I use every resource possible to get it for free, but it always works. It always works. My toughest times, they help. Therapy helps me acknowledge things about myself, and it helps me pull back those layers that's stopping me from succeeding emotionally. You know, and it's helping me get to my peace. I won't say I'm all the way there because I have, but I'm there where I can sit back. Sometimes it might take a little Hennessy in the beer, but I can sit back.
Yeah.
I can sit back and say, hey, all right, it's not that bad. You know,
You're inventorying this situation, and that's great. I'm so glad you said that. Like, it's okay and arguably necessary for us to find a therapeutic. I mean, and that means traditional clinical
hmm
services. Great, go for it.
hmm hmm
I use it. I use VA services as well because we
hmm
need an outlet to process. Because the critical P of the acknowledge to action process is processing, right?
hmm
And we need to
hmm
process in a safe, healthy manner. And there's a lot of different
Facts.
ways. Some people hike podcasts. I think it's like episode 5 or 6. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about, we're going to get into the specifics of.
Yeah.
So this sets a good tone, and I'll feature some of these. Well, more as this evolves, so will the information
Yeah.
and sharing of this information on and incorporate into future episodes. So
Yeah.
thanks. On a parting note, so what I like to do, because I didn't get a chance to talk about it. I used to do the Veteran Power Hour podcast, right? And
hmm
that's when I was at Montco Radio, when I was at the community college, Montgomery County Community College, and I had access to a full studio, and it was awesome. And I had access to music, right?
hmm
So a big part of what I did with the Veteran Power Hours was I always had an outro song. So
Yeah.
I'm going to build a playlist that's going to be
hmm
accessible on Spotify, um, Apple Music, and all your traditional streaming services, right? So, what song do you want to dedicate to the podcast?
Oh man, this is a tough one because I listen to so much music.
Yeah,
But whenever somebody asks me about a song, I always have whatever version of it is, because we keep redoing the songs, but it's always that forever young. I wanna be forever young. That's my song, So I would say that, you know.
uh,
So
cool.
that's my song. That's my song. So you can put that up there.
All right, I will. This was awesome, Nafis, and in the uniform, Senior Master Sergeant Beyah. Thank you, Nafis, my friend. This was awesome. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you.
I value your time and all this is feedback. And I know this is going to impact so many others as this grows. So will the outreach to those who are in need of this. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you for your service. And I look forward to staying connected and engaged with you.
Yeah, for sure. Keep doing it, man, because what you're doing is very important. What you're doing is very important, and uh, men and women of the services, they need this. They need this. Because you never know what somebody's going through, and it's a clip that you can have, and it'll change their life. It could change their life. Whatever advice, whatever, it can change their life. So you got to keep it up.
I will. I appreciate that motivation. I
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
So until next time, man.
for sure. Invite me back.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes. You have always,
Yeah,
and we could co-host an episode in the future. So there's so many different ways and directions that this is going to go. Like
yeah,
slow and steady wins the race. I'm gonna take it one lap at a time.
yeah,
And
for
and
sure.
just really get some good feedback. So I appreciate it.
All right, all
Uh,
right, all right, man. I'll talk to you.
all right.
All right.
This officially concludes episode 1 of the Acknowledge to Action podcast. A big shout out to Nafis. What an amazing guest to have for our inaugural episode. Just within a few days of this episode being released on March 1st, he retired from the United States Air Force after 21 years of service. Man, what an honor to have him on here as our first guest and to be able to give him a shout out, just a small shout out recognition for 21 years of service. a huge congratulations to Nafis for this accomplishment. It was great having him here, and I can't thank him enough. The music playlist, the Acknowledge to Action music playlist, will be accessible on Spotify in addition to the Acknowledge to Action website as well. This playlist will grow as our interviews grow. Occasionally I'll drop a song in there, but you at the very minimum always have an added song for each respective guest that's on here. We look forward to staying connected and engaged with you, and always remember, embrace the journey. Until next time.